Welcome! Now that we know what vocabulary and context questions are, let's talk about your job when you answer them. When you answer a vocabulary and context question on the SAT, there is one principle you should always remember. Context is king. The SAT doesn't simply want to know whether you've memorized the definition of a word. Instead, your job is to determine, what does this word mean in this specific passage? And that distinction can completely change the answer. Here's the goal. When you see a tested word, don't immediately think, what definition do I remember? Instead, think, how is the author using this word here? That's important because many English words have multiple meanings. A definition that is correct in one situation might be completely wrong in another. So the passage, not your memory, has the final say. Let's see how this works. Imagine the passage says, the explorers faced many challenges during their journey across the desert. Their meticulous planning helped them prepare for every possible danger. As a result, they completed their mission successfully and safely. Suppose the SAT asks what meticulous means. Maybe you don't know the word. That's okay. Instead of guessing, become a text detective. Look at the surrounding information. The explorers prepared for every possible danger, and because of their planning, they completed the mission successfully and safely. Those are our context clues. Now look at some possible meanings. Could meticulous mean careless or sloppy? No. That contradicts the passage. Could it mean lazy or unmotivated? Again, no. The explorers clearly prepared carefully. Could it mean quick or fast? Nothing in the passage tells us that their planning was fast. But what about very careful and thorough? That fits perfectly. So, even if we didn't know the word beforehand, the passage helped us determine that. Meticulous means very careful and thorough. That's vocabulary in context reasoning. Now, let's turn that example into a strategy you can use on test day. First, ignore your first instinct if it's based only on the definition you already know. Why? Because the SAT may deliberately use a familiar word in a less familiar way. For example, consider the word bright. You might immediately think of something that gives off a lot of light. But if a passage says, she was a bright student who quickly understood difficult concepts, bright means intelligent, not full of light. So don't automatically choose the most familiar definition. Let the sentence tell you which meaning is intended. Second, read the surrounding sentences. Don't isolate the tested word. Read what comes before it and after it. Those sentences may contain examples, explanations, contrasts, or other clues that reveal the meaning. Think back to our meticulous example. The word by itself might be difficult, but phrases such as every possible danger and successfully and safely give us evidence that the planning was careful and thorough. The more context you examine, the less you have to guess. Third, test the answer choices. Take a possible definition and mentally substitute it for the original word. For example, their very careful and thorough planning helped them prepare for every possible danger. Does that make sense? Yes. Does it preserve the author's message? Yes. Now try. Their careless and sloppy planning helped them prepare for every possible danger. That doesn't fit. The sentence contradicts itself. Substitution is powerful because it turns an abstract vocabulary question into a much simpler question. Does this meaning actually work here? Finally, choose the meaning that fits the passage best. Notice the word best. You may occasionally see more than one answer choice that could be a real definition of the tested word. That doesn't mean both answers are correct. You need the definition that matches this particular context. So you're not asking, could this word ever mean this? You're asking, does this word mean this here? That's the difference. And here's the key lesson to remember. Context is always more important than memory. A familiar word can have an unfamiliar meaning. So when you encounter a vocabulary and context question, don't rush to the definition you recognize first. Instead, read the passage, find the context clues, test the choices, choose the meaning that fits best. Most importantly, always let the passage, not your first instinct, determine the answer. Because on SAT vocabulary and context questions, context is king.
Keep learning with Kademix. Visit www.academics.com for more videos, study resources, and expert tutoring. See you next time!